have here with us Giulio Marini from the University of Catania, which is located in the south of Italy, more specifically in Sicilia. And let me just read this part so that I don't make a mistake. So Giulio is a senior assistant professor tenure track at the University of Catania and associate editor of studies in higher education. So if any of you guys are thinking about publishing in higher education, in studies in higher education, you should talk to him. So previously he has been very very mobile and international. So before he was at the Center for Global Higher Education, Lily knows the place quite well. At UCL, not sure if you were also at Oxford, you were only at UCL or Oxford?
No, never been in Oxford.
Okay, so
even for 2 weeks.
So just the face in UCL, but also in SIPS, in Portugal, in Porto, and in the Scuola Normale Superiore, and in the National Research Council in Italy. He got his PhD from La Sapienza University in Rome. And he brings us this topic, Brexit, brain drain of Europeans and brain drains of Asians. So let's hear about it. Giulio, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. I think it's gonna be for 45 minutes, more or less.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So plenty of time. It's a privilege. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I remember last year I was teaching like girl at UCL. It was a dream to be in such a warm place, doing a visiting rather than teaching one session after another. So very good. And also to be around some friends, hopefully also new friends. So the topic of the day is something I have under peer review, like many papers that are presented in conferences, but never presented this one. And it's about Brexit, something that was about myself and my family as well, since I spent 7 years in the UK. So this presentation is going to be about Brexit, why Brexit happened. There's no solution to this, but it is worth putting some bigger picture. Freedom of movement and the settled status, which is something you need to know if you're not aware, or you might not be aware, because I guess I'm the only European here with my own wife, Viviana, who will make another presentation here for you in the minutes or so. And the other 2 young people here who are there are also some counter policies about Brexit and the specific problem of a function of talents. I will speak about that briefly. Some previous findings, I will speak about that briefly, and then I will spend hopefully more time about current findings, meaning that the main paper behind this presentation and also the most fresh data we have available so long. The new wave will be available next March, but I won't be able to access those data because I don't have anymore any email address suitable for having free access to those data. Basically, the HESA data, Higher Education Statistical Agency in the UK. And if you have some training, permission, capacity to work with Tableau, you can crunch data about staff, students, other things such as financial indicators, key performance indicators, etc. Some focus on Asia. Perhaps I promised a little too much about that. I realized that the main country having academic staff in the UK, surprise, is China. And it's also growing fast. And last, some prospects, hopefully also some questions from you and my own answers. So, Brexit. I could speak about that for ages without really giving you an answer to the question why. We want our country back. That's the used to be UKIP party, which doesn't exist anymore, but the person behind the UKIP party had another party and now possibly another third party, which is Nigel Farage, the person whose last name is not really British. This model background is often used, not just from this party, but to mean Britain, mostly, rather than England. Although Brexit was voted by the English people. Scotland didn't vote for leaving the EU. Same did Northern Ireland. Wales voted for Brexit, but further analysis showed that those who made Brexit win are English retired people who went to Wales for enjoying the last stint of their lives. So it is really an English problem. I can tell you that I found the very first time I called off a train in Manchester station to go for the very first time in my life in Huddersfield. I found a person like that one. Actually, he was a sandwich person, you know, with double messages. And I was believing he was very on the left of the political spectrum. Then I read the message, and after a while, I had to surrender. It was a pro-Brexit kind of message. And that was pretty much after Brexit referendum. Now we know what the public discourse is in Europe about Brexit. People witnesses somebody doing something against his own interest. That's how we see in the continent Brexit, such as, you know, shooting one's own feet. But she was about this one. Remain winning 43 versus 42. I can tell you that the very day of the Brexit referendum, I was on foot between LSE and UCL. I was one of those streets. There was a Sainsbury shop is still there. And there was one of those, you know, evening news telling that polls were putting the Remain with a very tiny advantage. I went on foot back home. That time home was Camden, Hampstead Heath, where Rosa was born. But the situation was really strange. And the morning after the 24th, the situation was desperate in that area of London, and we realized that we lived so long in a bubble, and the country was really different. When we moved to Huddersfield, that was pretty much more visible. The image is an example of a Brexiteer with these stands, which became famous at a certain point in 2019. This man is passionate with Brexit, and he's currently was recently Minister of the Public Administration or something. So he was basically spending time trying to fire senior people in some ministries, etc. And he's much in favor of doing something such as perhaps privatizing NHS, these kind of things. This is a picture from Marini's, so you don't find these online anywhere. This is one of the places we used to go to have a cappuccino or anything looking like a cappuccino without being a really Italian cappuccino, but it was okay anyway. This place was nice for putting things into a joke. That was in one of those many deadlines, possibly defining exactly the moment of Brexit, okay, which you never really understand when Brexit happened, which is the problem if you pretend to make some statistical analysis such as difference in difference. You need to know which is the moment in time splitting the time series into two halves. With Brexit, it is a big problem. You need to specify what exactly you're talking about. Are you talking about importing tomatoes? Are you talking about talents? So, but this one is nice because Brexit special, tell us what you want, and we'll give you something completely different. So if you want a Brexit to have more money for NHS, the following day you say, no, it's not happening. So that was the gist, and I don't think that man owning that kind of pub was particularly popular for this, but I really liked this one. So this is The Guardian a couple of weeks ago, 2023. Britain still needs post-Brexit deals, but has the EU moved on? My impression, that's a very personal opinion, is that the British public opinion, the English public opinion, is still not getting the point on Brexit. So they ask things that are not really reasonable, and the whole situation is also particularly tricky. So the current Prime Minister, although having given some role to David Cameron, who was Remainer, cannot politically make any statement about Brexit other than we stay out. So this is a conundrum of one of these situations. The Guardian supposedly to be on the left of the political spectrum, but I was surprised by this image, which is the UK pretending to give hand and the EU being so nasty to say no. Now, this is, to some regards, this is true. It is both sides also. And at the end of the day, it is true that in Brussels, nobody want to talk about the UK anymore. It's done. So they're out, and that's it. They wanted it. It is a shame. It's a shame for us. In the continent, it is perhaps a shame for them, but their own business. So I move that up to this detail. Now, actual meanings, explanations of Brexit. Also guesses, of course. I personally believe that Brexit happened because the English public opinion believes that the British Empire is still alive. I don't know how you see things here in Hong Kong before and after 97, which should ring a bell also outside Hong Kong as a moment in time. But in my 7 years spent in the UK, on multiple occasions, I got the impression that they don't want to say that explicitly, but they still believe that the British Empire or something like that, such as the Commonwealth, is there. And they really believe that the world is waiting for them to get something. Maybe, to give something. So another argument is that the world is much more than the EU, which is absolutely correct. And Europe is not anymore the kind of place that used to be a couple of centuries ago, or even 1 century ago. It is pretty much different demographically, not only demographically, but at the same time, if you exit EU, it is strange to believe that you're going to be more global or more happy with trade, etc. It's pretty difficult to believe this. This is a quote. I couldn't retrieve the very interview, but it was after Brexit referendum. It was a man interviewed by TV. He said something like, look, I mean, to be equalized to the French, the Spaniards, the Italians, fair enough. Meaning, of course, we are superior, but it's okay. But what about these people from Eastern Europe? Polish people, Lithuanians? I think that one of the reasons for Brexit to have happened is that they don't buy that we are all the same. Mind that Australians need to pay more in the payslip for access some services. European Union citizens used to be equalized to domestic people. Okay, when you have a payslip, it makes some difference. Okay, and I said Australia because Australia is part of the Commonwealth, made up of former English or Scottish people. Okay. Some people believe it is also a reaction to the Scottish referendum. For some coincidence, I was in Scotland in those days because there was the ECPR conference in those days in Glasgow. So I remember very well people making some noises, etc., for the campaign for the Scottish referendum, which was no independence, the outcome. But some people believe that the Brexit referendum was used to unify a little more the UK, which is not so united in many regards. Populism, which got momentum in the UK, also in Italy, also in other places, in the US, etc., go back to your fucking country, foreigner. This is a sentence told to me multiple times by a car driver pretending to hit me when I was running in Huddersfield. I reported to police. That's a true story. But the general atmosphere really changed after Brexit. It is also true that nothing formally occurred for those who really were victims, because the freedom of movement ended much later. You couldn't have applied for the settled status. So formally, nothing really changed to us, to people like myself. I believe it's also a turning point in terms of image from abroad. So we used to think about the UK as a great country, not just the empire, but also for having invented the NHS, for instance. They're really proud of the NHS. There was I think it's in number 70 in those years we were there. You can ask Vivian if I'm exaggerating or not. There were people on the street clapping. At a certain moment of the day, it was 6 p.m. or something, maybe 4 p.m. And we were, strolling with Rosa. There was no Gino, and we were asking ourselves, what are you doing? They really look at like, strange human beings. It was the pride for the NHS. So where is the NHS in these days, especially after Brexit, but also during COVID-19? We'll tell you stories about COVID-19, but let's move on. So Brexit is many things. I would say that it is a policy of deep policy or an extra regulation. So, sweeping off thousands of pages about regulations. I was making a joke with my wife coming here. In the EU, you couldn't have scaffolding for making works in a building made up of bamboos. I don't think you could. I bet money it is against some EU regulations, and because of safety, etc. So it is an extra regulation, but for immigration, it is more regulations, more constraints. Because if you get rid of the freedom of movement, you need to replace it with papers. And then you need to be open to the idea that some other people may come to replace the Europeans. If they don't, you might be in a much worse place to collect vegetables, the few ones that may grow in the UK, for instance. Now, since this moment on, I will look at the effect on mobility of academic staff, which is more or less what I do when I do research. Now, the EU settled status, it is a nice piece of regulation that allowed us to remain with the same sort of rights or privileges, if you prefer. So in terms of fiscal things, capacity to move back to and fro the UK, although again here, I could tell you stories about this, but if formally speaking, it is the same. Then the UK believe, thought about a scheme for EU nationals, specific for EU nationals. Not so many people who applied for that. And that was also a special one for Nobel Prize. That was nice and cool because they received 0 applications. To be honest, for the garden, that was easy to put into a joke. Also for myself, I can say that I'm not a friend of the practitioners. You might have understood this. But it is also fair to say that there are not so many Nobel Prizes around. Not so many. And perhaps once you receive one of those prizes, you don't really apply for positions. The numbers of those people so tiny, it's not like postdoc people. So I don't think it is. It is nice to put it into a joke, but I wouldn't exaggerate too much. And then a few weeks ago in September, the UK went back to EU funding schemes, which is really good for them, possibly also for us, the rest of Europe. I can't say about that. Maybe in a few years we'll have some research for this. But it was ending uncertainty. I can tell you that shortly after Brexit, there was one of those small conferences with few people invited. Was Fusim's name and Pedro Teixeira. Pedro Teixeira said something very wise, such as, I mean, from an economist's point of view, if you have uncertainty is like something bad. It is a bad thing per se, because you don't know. So you may avoid collaboration because you don't know under which regulations you will follow. I buy this, and time proved that he was absolutely right, because in these years, until a few weeks ago, it was a mess, especially in STEM. Now, some previous findings, sorry for self-citations here. This is a paper I did in 2018, exploring the same data set, official data, and in this paper was showing that perhaps among the younger generations, there was a fall on average salary, probably because of portability. I know many stories of people who are German, Dutch, French, etc., bringing back or just bringing a European Research Council grant salary in Germany, because it was not anymore the case to stay in England or the UK. That was just few, the time series was still short. In this chapter, I did with William a few years ago, a couple of years ago. Over here, you can see that, sorry for the very bad normalization. I could have put some for each some amount of population, but you can read it anyway. So in the first year I had 2004, 2005. Yeah, you have a lot of Irish people, but that's easy because the Republic of Ireland is over there. They also border each other. Greece, possibly because of desperate situations in Greece. And then you see mostly European Union countries involved. The other is Malta, Commonwealth country, Cyprus, New Zealand, Iceland, because it is far away, but from Iceland point of view, the UK is the closest country. If you look at most recent data I had when I was writing this paper, you see that basically Asia is not here. There's no Asian countries. There's New Zealand, which is far away, very, very far away, but culturally speaking, it is very close. And also Malta became part of the European Union by that time. And also, countries like Italy getting some positions. Now, some data. Right now, with the most fresh data I have, if I see the first 20 countries in full-time equivalent academic people, excluding the atypicals. In the previous slide, that chapter was including the academic atypicals, and I was working with some headcounts. Over here, I'm working with full-time equivalent. We can discuss later about this detail. But you can see that there are few Asian countries, China, India, Iran, Pakistan, but mostly European Union, and few Commonwealth countries. But we're not that many. And you see that Italy is the number one. The reason Italy is the number one rather than Greece or Portugal is that Italy is just bigger than Portugal and Greece. But the reason, I guess, is absolutely the same. I mean, this is really push and pull kind of factors. I mean, you move out from Italy because it doesn't make any sense to stay in Italy. Back in the day, still today, in many regards. I mean, my own salary, I can tell you, it's public. 100% of my salary is Danke Angela. Thank you, Angela Merkel. It's post-pandemic funding, post-COVID-19 Euro bonds. Okay? 100%. That was a special position, and I got it just because nobody was applying to go to Catania. Okay, so it was an easy win. I mean, actually, somebody has applied, but it was not so crowded. Also, the time series is nice. You see that China used to be around 3,000 people, and Italy was behind. But before Brexit, because of the post 2008 crisis, etc., we moved many of us over there in the UK because it was sort of heaven for us, pretending to do research or to be academic people. But you see, there is just in the last few years a decline in absolute numbers. And the UK is still expanding in terms of staff, it's still expanding in general, and the international has increased also after Brexit. Okay. Much of it is China contribution, actually, because over here we have an issue which is, okay, but how many Chinese doctoral students do we have in the UK? A certain number. Many of them wish to continue to work there. They don't want to go back to China for whatever the reason. And so it is a big pool of people to fish from in order to have young staff who might be paid not too much. So first, final points. Okay, that's a quite typical kind of situation in the UK. Now here, I was appreciating the fact that the absolute numbers usually grow for each country. And so even people from, say, the US, in comparison to 10 years ago, maybe now you have some more people working in UK universities, just in absolute numbers. But my point was, okay, who is growing more than others? So I was getting some pre-Brexit trend, and I was projecting some forecasts in order to see who was above and who was below that forecast. Okay, so the dark blue are those who are above the forecast. Those in light blue are those below the forecast, and in white you have the UK, of course, and that's it. So you see that most of the developed countries are having fewer, are sending fewer people to the UK. When I say are sending, I mean countries don't send people anywhere, okay, unless you have some very specific policies, but it's a free choice of people on some. And you can see here that only Norway had an above forecasted value. And among the developed countries, you may include China if you understand China is already fully developed. Many regards already still developing, literally, not in the sense of Africa developing maybe one day. China is developing for real. You see that, I mean, yeah, Brazil, okay, well, mostly OECD countries are in light blue. Now, a declining profession in Great Britain. I'm back to salaries, which is the dependent variable on the following slides. Here I have 2022 pounds income series. So if you don't make the parity of inflation, etc., you might have something different. But if you really live in a place, you care about that PPP parity across time, because I mean the rent is going up, food is going up, whatever. So I mean you need to know the real value of money. That's very simple.
Can you simply move the bottom part up? So no, in that part. Oh, I can't see what the lines are.
Sure, yes.
Just need to click the chat, it will disappear. Yeah, then. Yeah.
This will fit most questions. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay,
All right, thanks.
Yes, okay. Yeah. In blue, you have European Union people. In orange, you have non-European Union people, and then you have the domestic people. Now you see that overall, the UK is attracting talents. Okay. And this is going down for more or less everyone. And you see it, you feel it in your cash account if you live in the country. And we were discussing this with Hugo before the seminar. Salaries are not great anymore. There is also the pension scheme issue that came out so badly in the last years. But it was already in the agenda 7 years ago. The first time I spoke to some reps, UCU reps. So when I just arrived to the UK, I happened to interview UCU people at Carlo Street, the headquarters of the Union of the Academics. They told me that that was on the table. It was not yet happening, but it was on the table on the employer's side. After a few years, came out for real. So, yeah, possibly a declining profession, but I need to say that since it is still expanding so much, we need to look this in perspective, because I mean, when you have a lot of positions to justify the cash cow of Chinese students, for instance, bringing money to the system, you need teaching people. Okay, so you don't need necessarily people doing research, top level research. You need to have a good basis in the pyramid of people justifying all the fruits of money. So if you follow this argument, yeah, it is a declining profession, but possibly there is a certification within the profession. So some people will be in proper academic position, most likely in places like UCL, less likely in places like post-92 universities. And then you have also an increasing number of research only or teaching only. And they are exploited in many regards. Unfortunately, I got both contracts. So I have also personal experience. So, I mean, we could discuss this in terms of careers, perspectives, etc. Of course, the idea of different career tracks is not particularly great. It is, putting pressure on the system and supporting the perspective of those entering the system right now, so those who are around the age of 30. So, what about this again? Okay, sure. This one perhaps? Okay. This was this. Okay, another one. Okay. In the following slides, not this one, I will use these confounding variables, which is gross expenditure for research and development, GDP per capita, so World Bank kind of information. Tolerance, which is a rank of countries, so the most tolerant, I don't remember when it is now, but it's estimated, down to the least tolerant. And same for creative class, which is a score, and these kind of values are coming from at national level, okay? They're coming from some publications stemming from Richard Florida's works about the creative class that was popular some years ago, 10 years ago. So I'm using this kind of funding and also age in order to see better some push and pull factors, also some soft factors. Now, according to what you put in these regressions, you might have different values in terms of tolerance and creative class, might have also different signs. So we might speculate a lot about these meanings, whereas, of course, RD expenditure and GDP per capita, they always give this kind of results. But you can see also the difference between pre and post referendum. Now, pre and post referendum in this case is 2016, 2017 which is understood as pre-referendum and onwards. When I did the difference and difference test, which is the next slide, yeah, let's show this one. Yeah, this is another picture coming from a regression, an OLS regression, accounting for the covariates I showed you in the previous slides, so age, creative class, tolerance, etc. Also putting the single nationalities. And here you see whether a country after Brexit is sending academic people who are of higher or lower quality. What do I mean with quality? I mean people who at parity of age may earn more or less. Why do I do this? I do this because I don't have information about scientific productivity and production, citations, etc. Just don't. I mean, With this data set, I just have information about age or maybe gender, ethnicity, disability, many other things. But if you pretend to use salary as a dependent variable, all of a sudden you have a lot of constraints. Okay, so I had to work around this kind of constraints. And since I wanted to do a paper about push and pull factors and countries, etc., that was my own solution. So here I showed the coefficients that are either negative or positive. So in light blue, you have the negative coefficients, if I remember well. And the meaning of this picture is that basically, if you have light blue after Brexit, the average of the academic people, that nationality work in the UK is of lower quality in comparison to pre-Brexit time. And the other way around for the dark blue. So you see that in Europe, you have some people from Eastern Europe, not even all countries, and for which the UK attracted people of higher quality. But basically, only Portugal has sent people of higher quality. My interpretation, I don't know what Hugo believes about that, following also some literature, basically it's about the post-Troika kind of situation. That's my interpretation. This is long of conditions in Portugal. Explaining this possibility. In relation to the rest of the world, you see the same kind of problem. I mean, developed countries not sending academics of higher quality instead of lower quality. It is notable to talk about other two Asian countries, China and South Korea. The sand-colored countries, they are countries whose coefficient is not statistically significant. I excluded that, although I'm working with census data. So census data means that it's census. But I wanted to exclude anything which might have some outliers or working with few observations sometimes. Mind that, for instance, over here in Africa, you might have countries that are former French colonies, and you don't have many of those people in the UK. Therefore, it's not really worth to consider those countries. I mean, there's a big difference, for instance, between Niger and Nigeria. Okay. That's the kind of point. That's the main table with findings. Over here, each cell is a different regression. So it is the difference in difference main treatment kind of coefficient. And each regression is having also age and tolerance, relative classes, kind of things which I omit. And yeah, I have also the total. Well, sorry, I don't have age, not these cells, but this one with totals. Because over here I have age bands, which is the most I have, the most fine grained I have. So basically I'm working with 16 combinations, 6 salary bands and 10, if I'm right, age bands. That's the best I can do. So it's not ideal. It's not like label 4 survey. It's not like that. But if you use the label 4 survey from the UK, you don't have enough observations of people working. I mean, you might have enough observations of people working in higher education, but then you cannot really have nationalities. I checked that one because I was also working with level 4 survey from the UK. So a good way to read this table, which is a little complicated, is by row, so by each age band. And mind that here we have 7 models, and each model is attempting to look at a different possible effect of Brexit. So the first model is EU versus UK. Mind that for each one I did the parallel trend assumption test, and it is fair, okay? So it was consistent, it was worth trying this kind of statistical analysis. So this is model 1, EU versus UK. So I want to see whether the EU people have been paid less after Brexit or more or same, okay, for that specific age band. Then I also compare ex-EU versus UK. I compare any international versus the UK. I compare EU versus non-EU internationals. I compare EU 15. EU 15 is signed particularly common in Europe. I don't know whether you are familiar with that. EU 15 usually refers to the first 15 countries that form European Union. So in this case, there are 14 because it was the UK, there are 14. But basically, the other 10, 12, they are Eastern European countries. Okay. And this is important because over here, you overlap the freedom of movement argument, Brexit per se, and also specific working condition opportunities in, say, Eastern European countries or Central European countries. Sometimes, you know, if you think about Czech Republic, they say, no, we're not really Eastern, right? Or Polish people, with this, I remember a person telling me, in Poland, we are Central Europe, Ukraine is Eastern Europe. So, and then there is also OECD countries that might be either EU or non-EU countries versus UK. And also the final one, that was, I mean, after a while, I thought about that. In the beginning, I was not thinking about that. But actually, at a certain point, I thought, look, I mean, they always talk about this Commonwealth. Let's check Commonwealth. Maybe for the Commonwealth countries, Brexit is a great idea. And in fact, there are some positive effects. Positive from the UK point of view, okay? So meaning that you attracted academic staff, you pay them more, which means that they are higher quality. Unless you give money for friendship, I don't know. If you know a place like that, tell me, I will move there. So basically, I assume that salary is a fair measure of quality, which is, I mean, a big kind of assumption, but that's the best I could do. So for instance, for those aged, those who are really young, there are few of them, between 18 and 25, you see that there is a very big negative effect. £2,700 a year, it is a lot, because their salary is not that big. Right? So in percentage, it is a lot. And you see that people from EU 15, from Western Europe, after Brexit, they didn't go to the UK with a great salary. So those who were the best, they didn't go there, or they moved away. Or if they wanted, in principle, to go to the UK, they were competitive and good, they didn't. Not in the same kind of likelihood they used to do. In the next years, I'm very curious. So the GB academic system is expanding, therefore needing teaching intensive labor force. Expansion equals diluting average prestige. It's always been so in life. Recording this is becoming comic. Okay, prospect. Great Britain back to the EU funding schemes, not the Euratom, not the atomic energy kind of scheme, but yes, for the others. This is ending uncertainty. So we are back to uncertainty for us. So we demonstrated that uncertainty was a minus. Now we don't know what end of uncertainty will be. So it's uncertainty for us during research for that. So I don't know what's going to be in the next years. I'm very curious. So the GB academic system is expanding, therefore needing teaching intensive labor force. Expansion equals diluting average prestige. It's always been so in life. No betterment for salaries and USS at the horizon. I don't see the end of this. Now, many more staff members from non-EU, non-Western countries And not always they demand, the employers demand research capacity. I mean, formally, yes, they can't say during a job interview, we discard research capacity. But it's really, really likely and common practice to say you want to do research because it's good for your own career, you do that during the weekend. The source of your salary is teaching. That's quite common. There are criticalities because the overall relationship with China is not ideal altogether because of some tensions between these two countries. I haven't seen that between China and Italy, for instance, despite Italy did an agreement a few years ago, which was making no sense because my personal opinion, Italian politicians were not really aware about what they were doing because they are a little dilettanti. But overall, I would say that there are some tensions with China. I have seen this, some kind of desire to close the taps of the teaching students, of the students from China, the UK. Because yes, we get a lot of money. Can we afford to have few of them? Because we cannot have classrooms made up of just Chinese students. If you have one student who is not Chinese, they complain because the classroom follows a different tradition, they don't make questions or traditions. So that's British students, but also British staff. I have seen that, I can tell you. There is also the idea of brain cultivation, but then you might have returnees to China, so you should question yourself as the UK, do you really want to have so many Chinese postdoc people, etc., if then they go back to China and they basically you give them talent, but they will exploit talent in China, which is in some regards a rival. That's a big question mark. And then paperwork. I mean, as a teacher myself, I dealt with a lot of paperwork because of international students having to buy so many cards, etc. You don't have that. You used not to have that with European Union people. And still within European Union, which still does exist, of course. I mean, there is paperwork anyway, but it is totally different kind of paperwork. It is much larger. As I said, also cultural differences, despite there is a plus. I mean, if you want to have academic staff in the UK, you're a manager, you're a middle manager, a senior manager, you're happy with people believing that the union is something perhaps illegal. Maybe you shouldn't unionize yourself. Or maybe you don't raise your hand making questions. That's the kind of sentiment we have in these days in the UK. Now, the very last point of this slide of my own presentation, the following slide is the very last there are pictures. I mean, fancy pictures. In a few years, I would like to make another paper about top staff academic people. I mean, if you have lower quality people on average, that could be even okay if you need to have so many teachers doing just teaching. It could be okay. But do you secure to still have top-notch researchers in the UK, stealing them from Germany? Or are they still in that position as they used to do for years and years? I don't know, and we will see. Time will tell. So very last slide, my own email address. That's the correct one. Don't send emails to me anymore at UCL. Doesn't work anymore. That's the Marinis leaving Huddersfield. So that was us leaving the UK. I mean, my wife and Rosa. I have worked in the UK for another 2 years. This time that was the Ryanair, unfortunately, which is Irish. Unfortunately, there was not EasyJet. And the second point, because of Brexit, we had EasyJet, which is the British company with Austrian flag. Because of Brexit, they needed to have a headquarters in European Union in order to fly in European Union, which was wonderful. And that's me and Rosa in Bergamo, where we live. I mean, I work in Catania, but I spend family time in Bergamo, where my wife works. And yeah, so my son didn't witness that much about Brexit. He was more legal. So thank you so much and welcome any question.
Thank you, Giulio. That was quite interesting presentation. Questions? Most yes, Lily, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Giulio. This is in a sense that the results in a sense is surprising and at the same time not surprising. I have a few questions in terms of the first one is the academic talents you're referring to, because you know there are so many different types of contracts with universities, and these different contracts may be associated with a different level of salary, but also the whether it's fixed term or permanent term, and also whether it's 100% of their time or just 0.5 of their time, so on and so forth. So I'm wondering the decline of the salary, is it also related with the growing precarity of the job market, in the academic job market in the UK, rather than primarily because of the Brexit? This is my first question, the contract types, and also and the second one is about the visa regulations. You know that in the UK, perhaps probably for most people who would like to work there, if they do not have a PhD degree from the UK, then they need to meet a certain threshold of their salary so that they can get a visa. So for certain countries, for example, for China and other non-OECD countries who do not have special agreements, so that they need to get a higher salary in order to work there. So this might be one of the reasons for that, why China and many other developing countries are sending more top talents into the UK. So this is just a few questions for now.
Okay.
I will start with the second. Just today I read on some Italian newspapers that the Prime Minister decided to raise the threshold to have violence. Probably if it went to the Italian newspapers, press, probably the news is 48 hours old. I don't know, sometimes in Italy we have a delay about news from the UK. In the general labor market, for the general labor market, the idea is to don't attract people who earn not that much. That's the general point. That's not the policy for higher education. In many regards, the threshold, which is now 32,000 pounds a year.
I think it's between 20 to 30, but then they hope to increase to 38.
So it is not today. It is 32.
32, okay.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to have a visa if it's 38. It's just more than what a postdoc can earn in the UK.
Exactly. So the general idea, which is the same other populistic countries the West are having, is that of let's use domestic labor force rather than immigrants. Personally, I think it doesn't work at all. It's a wrong policy in principle. Although I appreciate there are some problems in terms of integration or assimilation of immigrants. That may be true. In terms of academic, yeah, it could be. I don't think it's done for Chinese postdocs. Okay, it's done for the general population. But at the same time, this is happening also in other countries such as Italy. Trying to don't have immigrants. First, it doesn't work. Second, I mean, many regards. One of the reasons it doesn't work is that those people, those positions, those vacancies are not going to be filled by domestic people. Okay, so in Italy we have the problem with agriculture. Who's going to collect oranges? Me? No, that was my grandfather who collected his own oranges because he was a farmer, not a peasant. Now, I'm not going to be there. But even people without a PhD, without any graduation, those Italian people, my own age, they're not gonna travel to any field to collect oranges. During COVID, this happened, which is a kind of natural experiment. Because of many reasons, in many countries, we had to use local labor force. It was a disaster. At a certain point, in Italy, we had to make special arrangements with Croatians in order to have some people collecting fruits, etc. And you have time constraint. You need to collect, fruits, etc. in a few days or something. Okay. You know what? I mean, Italian people don't want to do that kind of job. They don't have that expectation. That's even more true in England. So it doesn't work in many regards. Will it have an impact on the academic labor market? At the threshold of 32, 30, I mean, you might have a postdoc below 32 in England, you might have it. Yeah, you might have. So yeah, you might have that kind of problem. You might have. Although I trust that if they want you at 28, which is not great if you're in London, one way or another will hire you anyway. Okay, I don't think it is so. I mean, it's paper. So, second point, the number of immigrants in the UK has increased dramatically in the general labor force. In the academic one, same story. It's going up and up. I mean, you don't get English people doing academic jobs. I mean, you get the stars, okay? You get some others who are not stars, and they may get my own same salary despite having fewer publications. May have. Okay? Not in such big numbers. I mean, if you are that smart, you go to the financial sector. There's no reason. I mean, I guess you understand me. There's no reason to get that 40 plus salary in London. Doesn't make any sense. You start with 55 6 years ago. So now it's gonna be perhaps almost 60. There's no reason. Many people do this. I mean, of course you have those who are passionate. So it's nice. Then the first question was about the contract, etc. Now I look at the salary as a kind of, I'm not an economist, so I appreciate it's not perfect, but it is fair, I believe. And in principle, you might get £80,000 per year with a research only position. I know people, very few people, but it's possible. There might be special reasons. They don't really get a fully academic contract. They end to teach anyway. Okay, so even teaching only, in principle, you can become full professor. So you can earn a lot of money. I mean, relatively good money. So it doesn't per se really predict that much, unless you want to do different kind of research, checking whether different academic tracks are a problem. I mean, other than the typical academic one, they're a problem for academic growth in a way. Probably that would be true. The book we did with William and Celia Research just released this year, which is the contract I had, which was 4 years contract, fixed term, etc. That one is, a relatively optimistic book about careers and career tracks. I would say reality is a little darker than that. Okay, but yeah, it's a different kind of set of variables. It's a different research question. You need to make a different paper, basically.
So does your database includes part-time research as well?
Yeah, that's full-time equivalent. So if you have two people who are 0.5, you have one person. That's just a choice. I have crunched those data as headcount previously. You don't really get very big difference unless you want to focus on the very last stint of careers. So when you are 55 or above, you need to account for that seriously, because in the UK, basically you push people out of the system little by little, especially if you're a woman. You pass from 1 to 0.8, then 0.6, then you speak another time to the head of the department. Instead of going to retirement, you get 0.4. That's a typical story. I don't have evidence, but I bet money, I pay your lunch. For sure, there is discrimination against women about this. I'm sure.
All right.
But that's just the last, like 55 years old and above. For the rest, I don't think it's.
Any other question or comment?
Ask you a question, Julia, about the stratification inside the EU, right? Just because you make references to EU 15, and maybe in the future you will see even more those numbers into so I don't know, EU 5 original, the biggest, EU 10, and then some minors, peripheries coming in, right? So EU in general celebrates a bigger market, more consumers, more production. When I read materials about EU, I see comparisons. China is big, EU can be as big, more people better, more consumers, more production. However, you speak also about knowledge production. It's not the knowledge production market is different from the other types of markets, right, that exist in the EU. So in terms of this knowledge production market, does it really matter in terms of these types of 5, 10, 15, like you said, okay, in Germany, there may be more scientists who are Nobel Prize level scientists, right? But not, let us say, in, I don't know, Lithuania, Bulgaria.
I really believe it is a matter of having single countries spending more or less in terms of research and development. So research and development gross expenditure is a fair proxy of the capacity of a country to attract people of any nationality. I would say it is that one. Having crunched this data beyond these slides. Okay, I like to make many tables with them. You see that you have many more people, even after Brexit, coming from Bulgaria working in the UK. So I suspect it is a matter of domestic opportunities in these countries, and also the kind of the PPP, if you think about the specific country. So if you earn 28,000 pounds per year, even if it is, taxation to be paid, okay, and you are from Bulgaria, you might think about saving money and then you go back to Bulgaria, and it's money, you multiply money, basically. I think that's a piece of the argument for some other countries that are a little behind in terms of GDP per capita, which is another kind of variable I put there. So yeah, I know it is a little sensitive to use EU 15. I mean, at the end of the day, EU 15, you have countries that are particularly poor in terms of expenditure for research. Portugal, Italy, Greece. So there are some rotten apples in the chest, in the box there. Okay. And but overall, that's, you find a kind of argument quite often, and so I try to put that there, and it was working. It was not my first choice, and sort of wanted to check it also. That one was working pretty well, so I said, okay, I put it there. Then it could be that in future European Union will work in a different way. You might be aware, I'm sure, about situations of different speeds of European Union just for the reason of welcoming Ukraine.
Yeah.
And since Ukraine is much, much bigger than Croatia or Bosnia or Albania or Moldova, with all due respect, Ukraine is so big that if we get Ukraine inside European Union, we need to make new calculations for the budget and everything, because this big end, there's something to review there, unfortunately. Not our mistake, not Ukraine's mistake. So yeah, future will have a lot of to say also within European Union, pretty sure. And I don't think it is over the story of European Union. I mean, many people think so, but don't think so.
Right. Any more questions? I want to ask 2 questions actually. Number one, well, so it comes back to one of the comments that you had in the very beginning of the slide. So they're saying, okay, we equalizing myself with the French and the Italians is fine, definitely not with the Poles. But are they now equalizing with the Chinese? With labor force, number one. Because basically what you've shown to me is everything that Brexit wanted to be ended up being exactly the opposite.
That's the marshmallow kind of argument.
Right. And my second question is, I noticed that the salary of the British nationals is way lower than the internationals. And I was wondering about that because, when I saw the figures of the number of Chinese and from other countries rising up, I was thinking, okay, so they're probably being hired into the academic kind of staff, to deal with these international students that are coming from China and from these countries. But if this is so, they should be earning less because they would likely be in teaching-oriented careers. So, but this doesn't seem to be so what is happening? The British are doing the lecturing jobs and paying less for it, or there's something else going on here? And the Chinese and the others are doing research.
Yeah, well, regarding the kind of hierarchy of people, mind that in any form, I don't know how it works here in Hong Kong, okay, but in the UK, you have British white, other white, and then you have other people. Okay? They don't say yellow anymore. It used to be also yellow. You know what are the yellows? Okay. Now you might have also English white, Scottish white, Welsh white, Irish white, other white. You learn soon in this country that a person like me is other white. But on the street, I might meet Middle East. Because of the way I look, the way I dress, I don't know, people say hello to me now, and yeah, it's not. I never learned that one, but I should have because people say hello to me. Once a person stopped me and I was still running. I mean, also we just running all the time, and he was from Kurdistan, which is not a country. It's a would like to be country. So I'm from Kurdistan. So what? I mean, you're from Kurdistan? No. With all due respect, I'm not. I happen not to, but I like Kurdistan. In fact, I'm Italian. Oh, Italian, proud of us. Well, so this to say that it is a country not really believing in universal equality. It's it's a hierarchical kind of country, and the fact that the pay slip is equalized for everyone, Polish included. When I say Polish, it's because the country is full of Polish people. I mean, the number one country of immigrants. In fact, when you have the labor force survey data, you don't have full list of nationalities. You have nationals, then you have Irish, Pakistani, or used to be Pakistani, or whatever ethnicity, and then you have Polish people. You don't have Italians, you don't have French, you don't have German. Because they want to know about the Polish for their own policy reasons, for whatever the reason we can imagine, but also because there are so many of them. So, what is happening? I think that they can fish well from fresh PhD holders who are from China or from anywhere. They can fish well. They can get good fishes. Young, so they're relatively cheap, but they need to pay them relatively well because they're good. And that's it. Mind that these are academic people data, so I didn't include the admin side. The admin side is by far more populated by domestic people, and they don't earn much on it. Okay. So it is cleaned from that point of view. I think, as I said, you can have much higher salary today if you work outside higher education and you are English or Scottish or whatever. Just that, I would say. It's really going down in terms of salaries.
May I follow up? I think it's also, again, I think it's also related with the visa. For those international people, if they don't get certain level of salary, they wouldn't be able to work there. But then for domestic people, it doesn't really matter. And sometimes they are having like 0.4, 0.6 contracts so that they can also take care of the family. And I think that may also be related with the salary.
Yeah, there are a lot of stories. Well, I don't want to talk about single individuals, but yeah, that's. The visa is not something either you have the papers you enter or not. it's a kind of boiling situation or frying situation. And you are inside the pan and you are there, you are undercooking. So later you will fix the papers. Your boss is not gonna care that much about that. Actually, he or she is caring because he or she knows that he has power on you. That's it. So for many people, now also academia is becoming a place where you have the kind of exploitation. It's becoming the kind of place that you're going. So no, I don't think that they are equalizing the Chinese people instead of the Polish people. That's not the way they see that. They see that it was wrong to have the Polish people equalized to us. In fact, bureaucratically speaking, the Chinese are Chinese, so they have their visa, blah, blah, blah. Then for them, it's fair enough. All right. So if they need to pay money, they pay money. I don't think that's a problem of,
I think Lily still wants to say something, but we need to end the session. So let me just thank everybody that were in the audience and for the questions and everything. And next week we will have more. We will have Giulio presenting with Viviana and Viviana presenting solo. So I hope I'll see you again for completely different topics, by the way. I'll see you again next week.
equally depressing. It's about redundancies, voluntary redundancies. So it's about firing people. It's really nice, isn't it? You're passing from low salary into zero salary.
We move into Christmas, then it's okay.
It's a bit of Christmas. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much.